My name is Troy DeLuca. I'm the Vice President of the Guarantee Company of North America. We're a local bonding company, born and raised in the Salt Lake area. My territory is Utah, Vegas, and Idaho. And then the Phoenix office also reports to me as well, so I'm kind of their regional VP. So I handle a lot of the West Coast. I've been doing this for almost 20 years. I'm a unique breed in that I love my job. My wife gives me a lot of grief that every Sunday night I'm like, I can't wait to go to work tomorrow. And she's just like, what's wrong with you? You're sick in the head. I don't know anybody who wants to go to work. I actually love what I do because of you guys. I get to meet with contractors every day. I get to delve deeply into what you guys do. I get to understand kind of the risk and everything that's going on in your industry, and candidly, I just love my job. So it's exciting for me to be down here with you guys, and honestly, I don't need a real excuse to come down to St. George in the winter and golf. So hoping to play. I'll probably see some of you later today at Sunbrook, and so much so that I'm extending mine tomorrow to have to play in Mesquite tomorrow. So I enjoy being down here and goofing off. With that said, let's kind of dive into what I want to talk a little bit about. I want to outline a little bit about what we do, some of the challenges you guys face, and then obviously, as it says on the program, a little bit about what we want to see from you guys and what your banks want to see. And it's going to dovetail into a lot of what Tyler, the CPA, had just talked to you guys about. Hopefully I'm a little more interesting than him. Oh, sorry, I should have waited till you left the room to say that. You know how these CPAs are. It's all black and white. There is no gray. But I am going to dovetail a lot of what he says. So but before I do this, give me an idea of how many people understand bonding or have a bonding relationship right now. I just kind of want to get an idea of, okay, 4? That's it. Okay, so 5.
Do I like to? No.
You know, I just met with a guy yesterday. So I had a meeting down here, and I have a pretty good sized excavation contractor down here in Hurricane. And I met with him yesterday, and very financially stout contractor, but man, he's gruff. And so we're talking about a big job he wants to chase down the road here. And so we're talking about it, more than qualifies, and I'm like, yeah. And he goes, you know, I just hate you bonding people. And I said, why? And he goes, because it's just like a banker. I'm signing my life away, and I don't even like doing bonded jobs. I said, well, first of all, can you complete the job? And he's like, well, yeah. And I said, then it's a moot point. What do you care if it's bonded? I said, if anything, it's going to weed out some of your competition. So I finally got him to acquiesce that we're not the devil. You know, sadly, some of these people think that bonding is a pain, but it's actually a decent thing. So I just want to kind of talk a little bit about, before I really go in here, any idea of what business has the highest rate of failure in the United States? Restaurants number 1. Guess who's number 2? Contractors. So with that being the premise, let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges and why contractors fail and why bonding is so important. And the other issue I was going to say is that's going to dovetail into what I talk about is, what is the number one issue right now that contractors are facing? What is your biggest challenge today? Labor shortage. Everybody, every contractor. I have 165 clients. Every one of them that I've talked to has said, I could be killing it right now if I could just find more labor. I talked to a masonry contractor that I do a lot of business with last week, and I was talking to him about some of his guys, and he was telling me, yeah, we've got a couple guys that we hired that are in a halfway house. And of course, my first thought is, what? You hired a couple guys out of a halfway house? Are you kidding me? And he said, yeah, no, literally right now our hiring process is, can you fog a mirror and pass a drug test? And the latter really isn't that crucial, because he can get around the drug test. Yeah, that's how desperate some of these contractors are. So I don't know if you guys are that desperate, but he certainly was. He said, even if the guy can't pass a drug test, he can haul a wheelbarrow of brick from one end to the other's job site. So keep those two in mind. Contractors have a high rate of failure, and you can't find labor right now. So let's go into this a little bit. And the reason I'm going to talk about this is, right now, here's what we're seeing. In the market today, we are seeing a greater need for subcontractors to bond. Any idea why? Okay? So speak a little louder.
The contractor, the owners are saying, hey, wait a second, we're not getting these jobs done. I've got to have a bond so that I force their hand to get it done.
Exactly. And the generals are the same way. Generals right now are scared to death of you guys. And the reason is because of what I just talked about. Your number one issue is labor. You cannot staff these jobs and get them done. And quite frankly, these generals are freaking out. So as a result, we are seeing, is anybody, first of all, how many residential guys do I have here? Okay, fair amount. How many commercial guys do I have? Okay, you commercial folks. Who are you? Just throw out some of the GCs you're bidding to. And hopefully you're not disclosing trade secrets. I think it's public information, but tell me some of the GCs you're bidding to. Okay, New Star out of Park City. Okay. Kier and Big D. Okay. Have you been asked to, on Kier, have you been asked to bond yet? You are a lucky man. Because Kier, with any of their multifamily projects, which that's all they do, they're asking a lot of their subs over $1 million to bond. So you're very lucky they're not asking you to bond. How about, who else? I know you bid to the state of Utah. Hopefully I'm not disclosing any trade secrets. Ty bids a lot to DFCM. They're one of their preferred plumbing contractors. Who else? Paulson Zwick. Okay, anybody that's bidding to, anyone bidding on schools? Hogan, Big D, Hogan, Hughes, Mahas. Anybody? Okay. Okay, so when you bid to Hogan or Hughes on these schools, have you noticed anything that's going on with Hogan and Hughes? What do they typically ask you for? Okay, bond rates or a bid bond, right? They're asking for a bid bond. Any ideas why? They want you pre-qualified to bid their jobs. Now, one of the things that drives us nuts is they're not necessarily asking for what we call final bonds, and I'll talk more about what these are, what we call payment and performance bonds, but they want a bid bond. And that just means that you've gone through the process with us of being pre-qualified. And the reason is they assume that we've done our job and that we've at least pre-qualified you to bid. I just want to read you, this is a contractor that is coming into town. Anybody going to bid on the airport job next week? It's phase 2? Okay, none of you are.
Will they even let us?
Absolutely, they will.
Isn't a bid bond usually purely for if you submit a bid that's crappy and they've got to go to the next person before you bond?
Okay, so can I table your question? Okay, I am going to answer it here. It's actually next. But the reason that I want to kind of parlay into what I'm talking about is phase 2 at the airport. Holder Big D has phase 1. It's HD contractors. You're filming this, aren't you? So I can't say anything bad about Holder Big D. Let's just say this. Holder doesn't have the best reputation in the state of Utah. They've pretty much come in. They're a national general contractor out of Georgia. Huge GC, couple billion a year in revenue. So they're a monster. And they came in Utah, laid back, West Coast, East Coast contractor coming to the West Coast, and they have the mentality of, we don't care who you are, we're Holder, screw you. That's essentially what they're saying. So they slapped in their contract, this is, and I'm not kidding, LDs are $20,000 a day. If you go over 30 days, it goes up to $50,000 a day. If you go over 90 days or above, it can go up to $125,000 a day. So do the math on that. If you're late. And they have this mentality of, well, we don't care. You get the job done or else. So that being said, Holder didn't do the best on phase 1, so they've let phase 2 out to a different general contractor team. It's Oakland and a national firm called Austin Construction. I just want to read you a little bit about, I got these bid specs from a couple of my subs that are bidding. Now, we a lot of our subcontractors who bid phase one to Holder Big D bid in what's called the Holder factor. Obviously, they padded their margins knowing that Holder was going to eat through some of their profits. So they bumped their margins up a little bit. But this is Austin Construction's pre-qual. National firm, again, big firm, does $1.5 billion a year in revenue. And they're teaming up with Oakland, big firm. You all know Oakland, you're all locals. You guys know who Oakland is, I won't tell you, but they're probably $600-700 million in revenue. So two big firms. This is what they want from you. Before they would even pre-qualify the subs, this is what they're asking for. They want your past 2 years of fiscal year-end financial statements. So what Tyler was talking about. They want your tax returns or your CPA-prepared financial statements if you do them. They want a current work in progress schedule, which is, Tyler didn't really get into a lot of it, but he did give you this in your, did he hand out? Okay, he gave you this sheet, and we'll talk a little bit about what this is. But they want this as well. Now, there's a little bit of a risk into giving this job schedule out to a general contractor. Any ideas why? Exactly. I would never, and I would counsel all my contractors to never give this out to a general contractor. Candidly, I tell my subcontractors, don't ever give your financial statements out to a general contractor. And here's why. They judge them a lot differently than we do. I have told all my subcontractors, if you can, now, if is the big word there, if you can, just submit a bond letter to them and say, if you want to know if I'm financially stable or not, let me get a bonding letter that'll tell you my limits. Other than that, I'm not disclosing my financial statements to you because I know some general contractors, Jacobson, Layton, Oakland not as much, but Jacobson and Layton, they actually have their CFO analyze your financial statements and establish a bid limit for you. And oftentimes that bid limit is a lot lower than what we establish. So you're already being pigeonholed by submitting your financial statements. So just food for thought, don't submit your financial statements if you can. A lot of times you can kick back and say, listen, I would be more than happy to submit a letter to you from my bonding company stating what my bond limits are. Or, and that's worked. I've got 5 or 6 subs that have fought back and it's worked. But the reason I say this WIP schedule is this lists your jobs, your profit, and where you're at. And I have had this backfire on numerous subs where the generals looked at it and said, wow, did you know that there's a job on here for me and you're making 25% profit? That's not going to fly. So they start hammering on you and beating on you to lower your margins. So just, yeah.
We should be requiring the generals to give us their financials. They're the ones.
Yeah. And let me know when you find that leprechaun at the end of the rainbow and that unicorn bouncing with it too. It's just not going to happen. I like where your head's at though.
What they're after is they're looking to see if we're financially solvent to do a job. Well, my head, are you financially solvent to pay us to do the job?
Yeah, and there would be, well, don't get me started on general contractors. I do bond some generals, but I'm mostly a sub guy. I would say of my 165 clients, 100 plus are subs. So I am very tapped into the sub market. The bulk of my clients, I told you I move a lot. A bulk of my clients are subs, and as a result, I'm very heavily involved in the sub associations. I do a lot with the Utah Plumbing and Heating Contractors Association. I do a lot with the Masonry Council. I do a lot with the Mechanical Contractors Association. I know that's a bad word. They're the union guys, but, and I tell them all that time. All my union guys, I say, you're nuts, but whatever. And every one of them has the same issue. The other problem you run into with generals too is their pay when paid clause in their contract. It's beautiful. They hang their hat on that. And sadly, it is what it is. But I can tell you, to address that question, you're not going to get your financial statements from them. I jokingly with you said the unicorn and the leprechaun, but that being said, you can certainly ask if there's a bond on the project. There's no reason you can't ask. Like Kier, you obviously do a lot with Kier. There is a bond on that project, a master bond, and you can definitely ask for a copy. You are entitled, and that is your rights. It is public information. So that's one way. If they're not paying you, you should be asking for their bond company, a copy of the bond, and whoever your insurance agent is or your bonding company. I know I've had numerous clients call me and say, hey, I'm not getting paid by this sub or this general, and I'm going to name names because this is all public information. Recently, a large general contractor just had some issues in the state of Utah. I'm sure you can name it. Rhymes with Mahara. Get my drift? Had some issues, so I had to counsel them on a lot of my subs on how to make a bond claim against Sahara. Had some struggles. We've had another general, Craycar, have a lot of issues. I've had to counsel.
Them, I'd love because they owe me $30,000.
Well, Travelers Insurance is their bonding company, and if you have a good insurance agent, I highly recommend you make a bond claim before your rights are expired.
We're in that process.
Okay. I have had 2 of my subs been paid by Travelers, so keep that in mind. But that is one thing you should be asking if you're bidding to a general. Kier, ask a copy. Kier's fine, but ask for a copy of the bond anyway. It should be part of your risk management procedures. Okay? But anyway, let's keep going on this Austin part. So just because I want to give you an idea. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Did you have a question or? Oh, okay. I saw this. By the way, feel free to interrupt me at any time. I want this to be open discussion. Less of me talking is better, but I can talk all day. And I know I have an hour and 45 minutes, so I won't, because we need to golf. Okay, so here's some of the other things they're asking for. A copy of your interim financial statements as well, your in-house books, which I like you guys, but some of your in-house financials are ugly. They don't jive, and honestly, let's be honest, they show a lot of profit when the year-end statement doesn't show the profit. So you don't want them to know how much you make. A written plan for continuity in the event of the death of your principals. Provide a name of the company's current primary banking relationship. Is a line of credit maintained with this bank? If yes, what is the amount of the line and the expiration date? Has the company and/or any of its principals ever petitioned for bankruptcy, defaulted, or failed to complete a contract? Is the company or any of its owners or officers currently involved in any litigation, arbitration, or prosecution or defense of formal claims in connection with a contract, project, or subcontract? Provide detail of any liens over $5,000 filed against the company. Provide owner, general contractor, subcontractor, and supplier references. Describe the 3 largest jobs you've completed in the last 5 years. That's ridiculous. That's more than we ask for. And from those of you who hate bonding, that's probably the reason why you don't like bonding, is because you hate giving us, what I call opening up the kimono and showing us everything, right? They're worse. That's a general contractor pre-qualifying you as subcontractors. So essentially, what is the moral of this story? Just come back to us. This is more information than we ask for, and at the end of the day, if you've done what you need to do to establish a bonding relationship, a lot of these questions can be mitigated by a simple bond letter that states, you know what, we're not providing any of that information because we've already done it to our bonding company. Here's what they've qualified us for. And 9 times out of 10, now I can tell you, some of my subs that are bidding to Austin Construction on the airport with Oakland have submitted a bond instead and just said, we are planning on bidding this job. We will provide you a bid bond, which we'll talk about what that is. We will provide you a bid bond on this airport project. That's all we're going to give you. Every one of these subs it's worked. So keep that in mind. There's the reason I brought that up. Now, let's talk a little bit about, let's go into your question.
Hey, real quick,
Yeah, fire away.
why would they want to get into all that? I mean, trying to analyze and assimilate all that information and make a judgment about it, why wouldn't they just go to a bond company? Because, you're a third party, why would they go to all that trouble? They're so big, they've got the capability to do it.
Yeah, because they have a staff of 10 people that are in their accounting department that have nothing better to do.
It's not their travel.
Yes. Well, and like I told you, I mean, it's nothing against Jacobson Leighton. Fine firms, especially. Did you get that on film? Jacobson and Leighton are great firms, but that's why I told you the way they analyze financial statements is far different than the way I analyze them. I mean, and part of this is what I'm going to talk about. We, despite what people may think, we actually do factor in more. And Dave, I'm going to have you kind of speak up when back in your days. I assume everybody knows who you worked for right here. Am I okay to disclose it? Yeah. Okay. Dave was the president of Cameron Construction. I do Cameron stuff. But back in the day, we looked at more than just financial numbers. I mean, certainly that factored in, but our relationship also. I mean, I remember there was some times where maybe they didn't financially qualify for what they wanted to chase, but at the end of the day, we would do it for them because of the relationship we all had, that I had with Dave and I had with Kevin and certain principles of the company. So that relationship does factor in. Jacobson and Layton and Austin, whomever is looking at your financial statements, are strictly just numbers. You are a number. They are spitting this information into a computer or whatever this guy's pencil whipping it. He's spitting it in there, spitting out a number you can bid with. I know some states that even do this. Nevada, for example. How many have a Nevada license? Nobody. It's smart. But if you do ever go to Nevada, Nevada Contractors Board will do the same thing. They'll get a copy of your financials. Idaho's the same way. Idaho and Nevada will look at your financial statement and spit out a number of a bid limit. It's strictly computer and ratio driven. There's nothing else. What's that? Yeah. Yep. And I think Utah has some good contractor associations because they got rid of the whole requirement, the bid limit and the bond need too. Because now if you need a Utah's contractor's license bond, it's only because you either filed bankruptcy or you got issues credit-wise. That's the only reason the state of Utah, it's adverse selection, but we don't write many Utah contractors license bonds because they usually mean you have problems. So let's talk about, because a lot of you don't understand the bonding, so those that do have bonding chime in anytime, but I want to get back to your question. Tell me your name again. I know it's Spears, right? Robert? Jared, okay. Jared asked, what is a bid bond? So I want to talk a little bit about the difference between bonds and insurance, because I have some of you who don't understand what bonding is. So one of the things and the huge difference between bonds and insurance is somebody just name a name. Who's your personal lines carrier? Let's use Allstate, because everybody knows who Allstate is, right? Say I'm insured with Allstate, my personal lines, my home and my auto. If I go to Allstate, one of the things that Allstate does is they have a bunch of bean counters like Tyler, they call them actuaries, who sit in their little cubicles in their home office and wherever Allstate's based, and they spit out a bunch of numbers and say, okay, we think the state of Utah should make X amount of profit. If we write, I'm just using round numbers, $1 million in the state of Utah, we think roughly 30% of that will pay out in claims. So that's 300 grand we'll have to pay out in claims. You guys, fender benders. So if we can underwrite to 30% to where there's claims, what's our net profit, right? 70% is what our gross profit's gonna be. Sorry, not net, gross. And then we've obviously got our marketing reps and some other people that work for us. So if we have 30% claims plus our overhead, we realistically think we could probably make 40 to 50% profit margins in the state of Utah, a net profit. So they underwrite to a margin. Now, if they hit that 30%, great, they make money. If they go below, they make even more money. If they go above, that's when they start either raising their rates or pull out of the state altogether, right? There have been some insurers that have pulled out of Utah. Not very many, but some. I can tell you our rates are far cheaper than California. I couldn't even imagine living in, well, first of all, I don't want to live in California anyway because the whole climate it's weird. But California's insurance rates are ridiculous because of fires, mudslides, or if you lived in Florida, you're dealing with hurricanes, and if you live in the Midwest, it's tornadoes. We, for the most part, are somewhat protected by that. So our rates are fairly cheap, considering. But the point I want to get at this is the state, they underwrite to a certain percentage for the state. And they expect to pay out claims. So now let's go to the bonding side. Any idea what our margin we underwrite to, what we expect on loss ratio? Zero. Why?
Put it on everybody else.
Well, not necessarily we put it on everybody else, but what? What is it? If you know bonding, what is the bond doing? Jeff?
Guaranteeing you'll complete the job.
guaranteeing you'll complete the project and pay your bills. We hope you guys will do that. And 9 times out of 10, you do. However, there are claims, but we underwrite to a 0 loss ratio. We don't expect losses. Now, before you jump on me, because I have this conversation every time I meet with somebody, well, you guys just make money. You never pay out in claims. Sadly, we do. Ask Craycar, ask another large contractor, ask Sahara, ask all these generals who have failed. And there are subcontractors who are failing right now that have bonds on projects. It does happen. As they say, bleep happens. It does. And some of you will go under, because remember, back to what did I say in my opening line? What's the second highest rated business for failure behind restaurants is you guys, contractors. You do fail. So our job is to underwrite so that we know you're financially stable enough and that you have the experience and the character to not fail. Okay? So that's the big difference between insurance and bonds. And the other thing is let's say I have a fender bender at Allstate. I smash somebody, I accidentally hit their car, causes $5,000 in damage. Do I have to pay Allstate back?
Yes,
Over time, I might. Certainly they're going to raise my rates, right? Although they claim I get accident forgiveness. That's what at least Mayhem tells me on the commercial, right? They do accident forgiveness, but I don't necessarily have to come up with a $5,000 check to hand back to Allstate. Guess what happens if we have a loss? Jeff, what's something you've signed that says if I have to pay out, you agree to do what? Reimburse me. We expect that you guys pay us back. So, even though I work for a large insurance company, I view myself more as a banker. I can't believe I just said that. I'm like twitching here. I met with a bunch of bankers last week, and honestly, they scare me. They are the most risk-adverse people I know. And it just makes me laugh. Bankers are just a different breed. And so it scares me to even relate myself to a banker, but I view myself more as a banker. We are underwriting, we are looking at trends, at ratios, but the difference between us and other people, bankers in particular, is they have something we don't. They take collateral. How many have a line of credit? You commercial guys. Okay. What does the bank typically want as extending that line of credit? What do they typically ask you for?
personal line of credit.
Okay. What have you given to guarantee that line? They've done something, it's called UCC filings, but what do they typically ask for? We call it the C word, collateral. They want hard collateral. Typically when you get a commercial line of credit, they're gonna ask you for your firstborn, your house, or your, most likely in your business, all your business assets. Nuts, but okay. They want all your business assets. They typically want your accounts receivable. They might take a trust deed on a building. I don't know what you guys have guaranteed, but that's one of the things we're going to ask for too, is we're going to ask what's guaranteed, because if they have all your business assets, guess who owns you? You might be the stockholder only in name, but if you default, congratulations, Wells Fargo now owns you. And we've seen a lot of this lately, and this is my one plug. There are no bankers here, thank goodness, but I even tell them to their face. If you have a line of credit and you are in any sort of, you've tapped into that line of credit and you're maxed out and you're worried about it, I highly suggest you get another bank and start depositing your funds in that bank ASAP. Because this is what happened to a general contractor out of Idaho, Boise, Idaho. Large GC, 100 million in backlog, federal work, and they were struggling with their bank. They were tapped in their bank, they grew too fast, minority contractor, so they just grew so fast because the federal government was handing them work left and right, and they just, like everybody else here, didn't have the labor to manage it. So one of the things the bank did is the bank started realizing there were problems with this contractor. So they had a huge job, they deposit the money in the bank sweeps the account, shuts down the line of credit, puts them out of business, and now they're in the surety's claim department for millions of dollars. And the bank had every right to do it. Put them out of business. And the ironic part is they were scheduled to meet with the bank and the bonding company on Monday. Friday, they made this deposit. A check came in, swept it, and they were done. Bank doesn't show up for the meeting on Monday. Says, yeah, we're done. Here's our notice of our cancellation, and we've got our line of credit paid off. See ya. Puts this contractor out of business. So some of you might know who they are, some not. I won't name names. It is public, though.
That check satisfied the bank then?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a $2.5 million line of credit. They deposited $3 million account receivable check, swept the $2.5 million, and said, see ya, we're done. So yeah, that company is out of business, and the surety company is taking over all their contracts. A lot have been subbed out, but lots Hawaii work. They were in Hawaii, so probably 30 million. I'm just throwing out round numbers here, but a chunk of that was in Hawaii. So sad, it really is, but I've seen it happen too many times. So that's my one plug against banks. Be careful with banks what you're dealing with, because they do take collateral. We don't take collateral. I mean, we have for some financially struggling contractors, but for the most part, I don't take hard assets as collateral. I literally take a signature. It's called what we call a general indemnity agreement. It's a 5-page document. It really could be one paragraph, though. But you know how attorneys are; they get paid by the word. So our document essentially says, if we pay out, you agree to pay us back. But it takes 5 pages to tell you that. So, because again, attorneys get paid by the word, so it had to be 5 pages. But I'm taking a signature, that's it. Just assuming that you're going to do your job. Okay, that's the other big thing there. Yeah, fire away.
So now, when these companies do default,
Okay,
do they get to stay in business, or do you force them out?
it depends. In this particular scenario, it wasn't us, by the way. That's the only reason I said I wouldn't expose my own warts here. But this general contractor, we can use Craycar, for example. Craycar, not my company, thank goodness, but Craycar, from what I understand, might be back in business. But we had heard they'd kind of shut it down, and the surety, in their particular scenario, has hired a different general contractor to come in and complete their work. So we really have, in a claim situation, we really have 3 options. There are more, but the big 3 we call them.
But would they have to pay back their,
Yeah, if you can, but can you get blood from a turnip, right? I don't know how much is there. Maybe Mr. Craycar, I don't know the guy, but maybe he does have some, from what I understand, he's a developer at heart. Maybe there's some outside money there. I don't know. It's not my account, so I'm guessing. But Travelers certainly is going to sue him under that general indemnity agreement. They have remedies in that general indemnity agreement. So my hunch is they will probably go after him, but I don't know what's there. So, but we have 3 options in a claim situation in a default. We have the option to finance you through completion, because again, who knows the job better than you, right? Assuming you bid it, to bring an outside firm in is going to cost a whole lot more money. Because first of all, this happens all the time when we have to get another contractor, they find out it was bonded, they find out you're doing a takeover job, what do you think is going to happen to those prices? Yeah, of course. Oh, it's a bonding company. We know they're good for it. Our rates just went up. So that's why our first and our best option is just to help you guys get the job done. Because you know it, you bid it, you're intimately involved with it. Our second option is we can simply just cut a check to the owner. They have a bond. It's up to the penal sum of that bond, the limit, whatever that bond is. Typically it's your contract amount. We can just cut a check to the owner and say, you deal with it. You find your own replacement contractor. A lot of times that does happen. The owner has a relationship or they like somebody and they'll work with us and say, okay, the bond originally was $5 million. We think we can get this done for $1 million, and so who's on our preferred list has come and said they'll give us a deal because they like us and they like our business. We can work out a deal with you guys. Give us $1 million and we'll take it over. And a lot of times we'll take that option because we just get to wash our hands and say, fine, you deal with it. And of course they sign a hold harmless agreement with us and a letter releasing us of all liability after we cut them the check. So we do that a lot. And our third and final option is we just simply go get another contractor. We kick you guys off the job because you might be idiots and you don't know what you're doing and you just botch this job totally. So as a result, we just want to terminate you, get rid of you, and get somebody else on. In the case of that contractor I told you about out of Idaho, they got new contractors to come in. A big firm out of Boise took a lot of their Hawaii work because they're in Hawaii. 3 initials, you can probably guess who it is. But that firm took these contracts over and got them through completion with their surety company paying the bills. Craycar was the same way. They were terminated off some of these jobs. I'm pretty sure, at least I know the one is, because I have 2 subs on that job. They strictly went to Travelers then paid them and financed the job. Okay, yeah, there you go. So you know that you're getting paid by Travelers, right? Yes. By the way, how'd you like that takeover agreement? So Travelers, we don't do this, but Travelers sent a 5-page takeover agreement to basically replace from Craycar to Travelers. This 5-page document, one of my subs had me review for him, and I just was like, you're an idiot if you sign that. And I X'd out a bunch of stuff for him and said, send this back to him, because they can't legally make you sign that document. You already have the contract. Part of the bond, now I'm going to go into the bonding to answer your question. The bonding is a 3-way relationship, whereas insurance is more of a 2-way, right? It's you and the insured. Bonding is a 3-way relationship. We call it the triangle, right? Because everybody in it, and if I drew it here, you would have relationships going back and forth, a bunch of arrows doing this. There's the owner, which is the top of the triangle, whom you're doing the job for. There's the surety company, and then there's you, the contractor. Each has an obligation to each other. Your obligation to the owner is there's one underlying document that makes you obligated to them. What is that? It's a contract. That is what we step into the owner for. If you, for some reason, don't do your job, they come to us, and that contract is the underlying document to everything. It is what our bonds guarantee. Now let's talk a little bit about the bonds. There's a lot of different types of bonds, but realistically, in the construction world, you're going to deal with 3. You're going to deal with the bid bond, you're going to deal with the payment bond, and you're going to deal with the performance bond. Now the payment and performance bond are really one document. They're 2 separate, but really they go together. We don't charge for one or the other. They're together and then we charge the same amount. The payment performance bond, or let's start with the bid bond. The bid bond is going to guarantee your bid. When you submit your bid with a bid bond, typically they're percentages. They can range from, most of the percentages are 5%. I have seen 10, and if you bid any federal contractor, any federal subs here that bid federal jobs, what's the federal percentage? Oh, for the federal government, really? Are you bidding a prime or are you bidding to a general though? Okay. If you ever bid directly to the federal government, you'll have to do a bid bond, and it's 20% is what the feds require. So it's 5, 10, or 20. 9 times out of 10, you'll see 5%. So what that bid bond guarantees is that you are going to submit your bid, and if low, and they ask you for final bonds or the payment and performance bond, you have every intention to give them those bonds. So when Jeff bids to the state of Utah and he gives them a 5% bid bond, he is saying, if I'm low, I have every intention of giving you the payment and performance bonds that go along with this job, if awarded the job. Now, the bid bond, what happens if Jeff just says, okay, I screwed up and I'm done, or I have no intention, let's use that, because if you screw up, sometimes the owner will let you go. If it's a math error, 9 times out of 10, the owner will let it slide because you can get out of arithmetic errors. But let's just say you go back and say, hey, state of Utah, I know I bid this job to you and I gave you a bid bond, but man, this general contractor over here, this pretty brunette over here, said that I'm only going to make 10% on your job, but this job over here, I've got 20% margin, and I have a labor shortage, so I would really like to say, forget you on this job, and I want to take this job. What does the state of Utah have as far as recourse? The bid bond, right? It's 5%. They can technically come to us, the bonding company, and say 5% of that bid amount, so it's, let's just say $1 million was the bid, we would have to cut a check for 5% to the state of Utah. And that allows them to take that money and go to the next bidder. So that's what your bid is guaranteed. When you provide a bid bond, does that answer your question? It is guaranteeing that you have every intention that if you're awarded the contract or the bid, you have every intention of giving them payment performance bonds. Now let's talk a little bit about the payment performance bonds. We call them final bonds. They are two separate documents and two separate obligations. But the underlying thing that payment performance bond guarantees is that contract. Whatever is in that contract, we are guaranteeing two things. We are guaranteeing you are going to perform that contract as outlined, and that you are going to pay your bills. Now, under the payment bond, it covers, it's also known as a labor and material bond. Just like it sounds, anybody who can touch that job is covered underneath that payment bond. So what do I mean by touch that job? Subcontractors. You plumbing heating guys, you may have control subs. You may have minor framing subs. I don't know what subs you self-perform most of your work, but you might have some smaller subs underneath you. If they don't get paid, they can go make a claim on that bond. Your labor, and we don't disclose this a lot because most of your employees have no idea this is covered, but it's a dirty little secret, but technically your payroll is under there. If your employees don't get paid on a job, we have every obligation to pay your payroll. That's the labor part of that bond. Any supply house, so you've got the Allreds or the whomever, Standard Plumbing, whomever, Moan, whoever is supplying can physically touch that job, meaning their product is going to that job and they have an arm's length to it, they can make a claim under your bond. So a Moan or whomever can make a claim under that bond if they don't get paid. So that's what the payment side. The performance is that contract. So what's the moral of the story here? And I have to tell this to every sub I meet with. If the contract is the underlying document, what should you be doing with that contract? Please read it. For the love of all that is holy, read it. Because I cannot tell you how many times I look at subcontracts and go, are you nuts? Are you not reading this? First of all, there's an indemnification clause. I would never sign that. But you guys do. And I can't tell you how many times I've met with subcontractors and they're like, well, I don't know, I just have to sign the contract. I'm like, no, you don't. Some generals might make you sign that. That's fine. But it's kind of like negotiation. I mean, all of you have had kids. If you don't, you might have kids. And if you don't, then great. You're even luckier if you don't have kids. But what do kids do? It's a negotiation process. You're always fighting with them. Dad, I need $10. I have a 17-year-old daughter. This is constant in my house. Dad, I need $10. What do you need $10 for? It's a constant negotiation. I settle for $5. She's happy. I'm happy because I would have given her 10. Get her out of my hair. I know, exactly. So at the end of the day, it's like, oh, I won. I only had to give her $5, right? But it's a negotiation. You guys should negotiate with your generals. Don't just sign the subcontract because you think you have to sign the subcontract. Negotiate. Guess what? If they're issuing you a contract, you're in the driver's seat, right? They're issuing the contract for a reason. You're either low, sometimes maybe too low, but you're low, or they like you and they want to use you. So you leverage that position to negotiate a little bit. Red line. Don't be afraid to bust that red marker out and start redlining some stuff. Because 9 times out of 10, you can get away with it. Generals they just want you to do a good job, and if they're negotiating with you, it's because they like you or they want to use you. Sometimes it might be just numbers driven and they have to use you. But still, you're still in a position to negotiate. Why not? I mean, there are some of these subcontracts. I look at some of the provisions in there and I just go, why did you sign this? This is crazy, like an indemnification clause. Or a pay if paid. That's the big one right now. Not pay when paid, but pay if paid. If I were you, I would never sign a subcontract that says pay if paid. That's not your obligation. At the end of the day, you're working for a general that needs to pay you. Not if I get paid from the owner, I'll pay you. Now, pay when paid, that's customary in the state of Utah. That's customary all over the world. I mean, general's not going to pay you until they've been paid, but I would rather sign a pay when paid versus a pay if paid. Big difference there. Because pay when paid, they have an obligation. Now, let's be honest, generals, I know a lot of these big generals, they make a lot of money off interest income. They will sit on your money as long as they possibly can. And do they honor that pay when paid? Not necessarily. Because they'll get paid and then they'll sit on your account for 45 days, and then when you finally complain enough, they'll go, oh, that's right, here's your check. And you get it a week later. But a pay when paid is definitely less hazardous than a pay if paid. Okay, so keep that in mind. An indemnification clause, if you're doing any sort of bonding whatsoever, I would never sign that indemnification clause, because at the end of the day, you are issuing them a bond. And that bond guarantees faithful performance, and you will pay your and deliver a lien-free project. So why sign an indemnification clause to the general if you're indemnifying to us and we're guaranteeing that job? So keep that in mind. Those are just two of the big things I see, but there are so many more. I mean, the LDs. I see so many times where, like the airport job, I had one sub go negotiate with Holder and say, no, I'm not doing this. If you want me bad enough, and you know I can do it because I'm one of the biggest subcontractors that does this trade, if you want to deal with me, we'll negotiate. I want $2,500 a day and then up to $5,000. That's just the way it is. And I'm giving you a bond for the project. You'll know I complete it. And he got it. Instead of $25,000 or $50,000, he negotiated down to $2,500 or $5,000. So LDs are another big thing you guys should be paying attention to. What's in that subcontract? I love the state of Utah. They're great. They will typically do $250 a day or $500. That's palatable, right? Now, the other thing to pay attention to is actual damages in your subcontract. Any idea what actual damages are? They're a nightmare, is what they are. Because say, for example, you're bidding to a casino. Any idea what actual damages could be to a casino? Millions. More than your subcontract is probably worth. If you bid anything to a casino, there's actual damages. Restaurants are another one I've started to see a lot of actual damages in the subcontract. Pay attention to that, because what could a restaurant potentially do? 100 grand a day, maybe? A couple hundred grand a day? I don't know. Or a Best Buy. We're starting to see some of these box stores that are doing actual damages. And keep in mind, the general contractor will have this in their contract with the owner. A lot of times their subcontract to you will have what we call flow-through provisions, where whatever's in their contract will flow through to you. Actual damages is a big one. Keep that in mind, read that subcontract. I mean, I cannot say this with greater importance than I'm going to say it now. Read your subcontract, please. If you get nothing else out of this meeting, get that. Okay? Any questions thus far? I don't have, I need like a watch here. I need my phone. I should have wore a watch. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about now that we've talked the difference of the insurance and bonds, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to ask you for. Now, similar to what the Austin thing said, we're going to ask for a lot of the same things. So when you guys, those of you who are not bonded, you're going to meet with your insurance agent. I don't work directly with the customer, even though I do have a relationship with the end user, you contractors. I don't market directly to you. I deal through a network of insurance agents. Independent insurance agents is who I deal with. So Jeff and I know each other. I'm his bonding company. We know each other because he's the end user. I'm the bonding company, but we have an intermediary between us that's his insurance agent. His insurance agent brings him to me. Hopefully fit personality, hopefully because maybe I do something different than my competition, whatever. We'll get arranged together. And at that point, that insurance agent's who I market through. So your insurance agent, if they bring you to me, or to any bonding company for that matter, we all ask for the same thing. So what we're going to ask for is, and this is, keep in mind when you guys get set up, this is what we're going to ask for. We're going to ask for what's called a contractor's questionnaire. It's just a simple history document that you guys fill out that says the ownership information, so we know who owns this company, your accounting procedures, do you guys have a CPA, Are you doing a CPA reviewed statement? Are you doing an audited statement? Are you doing a compiled statement? Are you doing nothing? Maybe I'm just having my CPA prepare my tax returns. And I'll talk about the difference of good CPAs versus reviewed statements and all that stuff here, and I'll kind of delve a little deeper into that. It asks your job history. What's the largest job you've completed? We want to know that stuff, because if the largest job you've ever completed is a $100,000 house, and you want all of a sudden chase a 3-story office building worth $3 million, I'm probably going to drug test you and say, what the heck are you thinking? So keep that in mind, you residential guys. I speak generally, but I don't want anybody to take offense, but some of you residential people have no business chasing commercial jobs. There, I laid it out. So just keep that in mind. I mean, we see it a lot. Oh yeah, I dug the basement, an excavator. This is a true story. Happened probably 2 months ago with my underwriter, one of my underwriters that works for me. Gets submitted an excavation contractor. And the excavation contractor puts on there his largest job was $100,000, a basement digging. And now all of a sudden he wants to go tear up Pleasant Grove, the streets, and lay a 12-inch water line, gradually building up to a 24-inch water line 6 feet deep in Pleasant Grove City. I'm like, are you nuts? Come on. How about you do a city job, smaller city job first before we, the basement digging is one thing. Tearing up city roads and dealing with angry, pissed off homeowners is another. And oh, by the way, the city engineers are not good people. They're not friendly. So you have no idea what's about to happen. So that's why we ask for the experience. We want to know those kind of questions. Another thing we're going to ask for is 3 years worth of fiscal year, and you all have a fiscal year end date. Most of you are on a calendar year end, right? 12/31 is your fiscal year end date. There are people who are different. We've seen 9/30, I've seen June 30th, I've seen March 31st, I have one client down in St. George area whose their year ends 11/30. There's no real rhyme or reason to the date. Most people select the calendar year end date as their year end. So we're going to ask for 3 years financials. So if I'm meeting with you today, I would tell you you're going to need a 12/31/16, 15, and 14 financial statement or tax return. Plus, we'll eventually want 17 when your CPA is done. None of you will have your 17s done probably yet, but eventually we'll start asking for it. Usually about March, April, we start beating on you for it. We ask you for a copy of your bank letter, just a banking relationship. Do you have a line of credit? How's that line of credit secured? The reason we ask is because the bank takes collateral. We don't. We just want to know if they own you and if they're a silent partner to you or not. Now, I say silent partner because if they have all your business assets as collateral, your bank owns you. You might think you're the owner. You might be only in paper, but let me tell you, if you default, the bank owns you. So they're your silent partner. So be very mindful when you enter into a relationship with a bank, what they are asking for as collateral. And is it fair? I have a client that has $2 million in cash in their business, and they're worth about $3.5 million in the company. Very strong contractor. They have a $100,000 line of credit. They never use it. They haven't used it in 10 years. And the bank has receivables, a personal guarantee from the owner, and some equipment as collateral. And I'm sitting there going, that's unjust enrichment. First of all, if you're that strong and you're getting a CPA reviewed statement, guess what your collateral should be? Zilch. They shouldn't have any collateral for a $100,000 line of credit for a company that's averaged $2 million in cash for the last 10 years. It's nuts. But he's just never looked at it. He just signed it years ago, just kept renewing it, paying the fee. No, look at that stuff. Just like I tell you to read the subcontract or read your contracts, know what you're signing and read the banking agreements, because oftentimes it is unjust enrichment. If you default, they have way more assets than what is the line of credits required. So keep that in mind. Read your banking agreements. We certainly will look at it for you. We'll ask for a personal financial statement. If your company's not well-heeled enough to stand on its own, we do require, and what makes us different than an insurance company is, remember that payback provision I told you about, that general indemnity agreement? We will require you to sign that with your spouse. Now, here it comes. Everybody always asks me this. Why does my wife have to sign? Or husband, if you're the owner of the business. But Why does my wife have to sign? She has nothing to do with the business. And let me just tell you, she has everything to do with the business if she divorces your sorry butt. Because her attorney will get half the company. Trust me. Well, I know. I'm a realist. I've just been in this business for 20 years. I've seen it happen. I'm seeing it right now. With one of my contractors is going through a divorce. His wife has subpoenaed me, all my records. I mean, this attorney's a dirtbag, but I won't get it. That's why I'm not going to name his name, because I am on film of saying that. But this attorney is a shyster. I mean, he is everything that epitomizes what an attorney is. Just greasy and oily. And he's subpoenaing me. He's subpoenaing my records. He wants a letter from me stating what the effect will have if the company's cut in half. And I mean, it's unreal, this nasty divorce. So there is a reason why. And candidly, we don't want you guys, because we're an unsecured creditor, we don't want you guys shifting assets to your wife if she's not a signer on the bond. We don't want you shifting assets to her and saying, I'm filing bankruptcy, but my wife gets to keep the $1 million house, and you guys don't have any rights to it. So that's the other reason. And Utah, for the most part, is a community property state. Half of your assets are hers, and her divorce attorney will tell you that. So that's the reason why. I've had this question asked to me as well. I don't know if you guys will, but I'm going to just go ahead and address it because I get this all the time too. Well, why can't the company just stand on its own? Why do I have to sign? I don't sign any personal guarantees. Listen, if your company financially justifies it, I'm fine with that. I have a handful of accounts that I don't have any personal indemnity from. Just the company signs. No owners, no wives. Because the company has to be able to qualify for it. So now, why then would you guys, so I get this question asked, well, why do I have to sign personally? The company should be the only one taking out the bonds. I'm not. So why do I have to sign? Simply put, here's my realist. I know I'm negative, but it's just true. If you're not willing to back the company, why in the hell should I? If you're not willing to back the company, the guy who's running it, or lady, who's running it every day, making the decisions every day, and you don't want to back your company, but yet you want me to back it, you're nuts. Of course I want you to sign for it. At the end of the day, it's all about you guys. You tell me you do your job, it's a moot point. You don't hear from me. Jeff does his jobs. He's never had a bond claim. He doesn't hear from me other than once a year we talk and say, what do you need from me? It's really that simple. He provides me information, we continue the relationship, I issue his bonds all day, and life's good. It really is that simple. Yeah.
Send the check.
Exactly. So if you just do your job, it's really not that bad. So going back full circle, those of you who are scared of bonding, it's not that bad. It really isn't, assuming you do your job. So keep that in mind. I know. Similar to, like I said, we're similar to a bank. We ask for the paperwork. Although I've done some deals where it's been minimal paperwork. I mean, I'm telling you what we're asking for, but does that typically happen? No, that's in a perfect world. The utopics, we get everything we ask for. We get it. You guys, I just had this deal happen probably maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago where a client has, one of my insurance agents has a customer with another surety company. They're out of Colorado. They're just cumbersome. I mean, they are worse than a proctologist, right? They are just grilling these people. And he sends the account over, very flush account. There's no problem. They're not a typical contractor, but they need a bond. And so one of the things that we looked at is, very reputable company. You guys would all know who they were. And I looked at it. I get their a couple of years financial statements. I look at it. I said, nah, no brainer. I'll do this $6.5 million bid. I'll approve it. I didn't even have an indemnity agreement. I didn't have anything. It was just, I'll approve this bid subject to putting an indemnity agreement together, subject to getting me a full file if the contractor's low or if this particular provider's low. So, we're flexible, and that's the key. I think that's what makes us a little bit different from my competition is A, I'm local, and B, I'm able to make decisions on the fly and be a little more flexible. And that's where your insurance agent should come into play, is he should be aligning you with a bonding company that gets what you do and that also meshes personality-wise. Like if you're Joe optimistic, I'm a realist, we're probably not going to mesh because I'm going to probably bring you down to reality and say, yeah, that's great in a perfect world, but here's really where it's at. So I might not mesh personality-wise with some of you. Some of you, I will. So let's talk about, I talked about what we're going to ask for. So let me kind of give you this, a little bit of what we're going to ask for. And so I told you kind of what we're looking at as far as what we're going to ask for the information, but why? And now here's my plug, and Tyler's not even here to hear me, but Tyler is actually one of my partners that I do a lot of business with. We get nothing from each other. He doesn't, maybe he'll take me golfing for sending him a referral, but other than that, I'm not on his payroll and vice versa. But you have 4 partners in your business that are silent partners, but yet are crucial and partners. Any ideas what those 4 are? Okay, banker. I heard too many things. What did you say?
I said bonding agent.
Okay, insurance agent, bonding agent. We'll lump that together. Banker, CPA. Who said the CPA? Yes. Okay, accountant. What's the other one? Well, sadly, I'm considered the bonding. I get lumped in with the insurance agent, but it's the guy who I said is greasy. Some of them aren't. Your attorney, right? Those are your 4 silent business partners. Attorney, let me just give a plug, and as much as I do hate attorneys, they're a necessary evil. We have attorneys we use. We use a prominent law firm in downtown Salt Lake. They're great. They're awesome to work with. But if you have a good attorney, here's the key though, and I have this happen a lot. You are in the construction industry. It's a niche. It's very unique, and it's not like a manufacturer or a restaurant. If your attorney is a family law attorney, I'm sure he'll be great dealing with your divorce and your custody issues if you are, or your family trusts, whatever. He has no business being your construction attorney because my hunch is the guy doesn't understand contract law. It's very unique. That subcontract is a nightmare, and you need somebody that gets it. So we only deal with construction law firms. The firm that represents us, that handles all of our claims, is a construction law firm. We deal with, when I refer, sometimes I get calls from you guys, from your insurance agents or you, where you'll say, I need an attorney, I'm in deep with this general contractor, he's not paying me, or there's disputes on change orders or whatever. I need a good construction attorney. I will only give you to firms that specialize in construction. I'm not going to give you the family law, the trust, or the estate planner. It doesn't, first of all, if I give a referral out and the guy's an idiot, it looks poorly on me, right? Or it reflects poorly on me. So I only refer to people that I get and that understand your business. The banker. Ironically, there are bankers who don't like contractors. There are a lot of bankers who don't like construction industry. So, if you're looking for a banker, you need to make sure you align yourself with banks that like construction. Sadly, you guys, like I said, restaurants, then a lot of bankers are like, whoa, no, we don't want anything to do with contractors. There are a lot of banks that are getting out of construction. So make sure you're with a bank that gets it, or that you've got a history with, or if you're looking for a new banking relationship, make sure you're aligning yourself with banks that understand construction and that want to lend to contractors. There are a handful, believe me, it's tough. I've been meeting with bankers. So Tyler and I go way back because I teach a class at the AGC, which is construction accounting. Tyler's firm runs it, and they have me come talk about bonding every now and then. And CPAs and we align a lot. Well, a banker from Zions Bank came and spoke with me. And it was, you talk about polar opposite. This banker, first of all, this is the way I dress for work anyway. I mean, I'm not a suit and tie guy. I think I own one suit. And even then, that's for funerals. But I am not a shirt and tie guy. This guy shows up like he's straight off Wall Street. I mean, the expensive suit, the gorgeous tie, the Allen Edmonds shoes, and I roll in like I'm ready to go to the first tee. And literally our presentations were polar opposites. I mean, he is boom, 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 boom. I'm all over the place. And when we were all said and done, he and I actually forged a relationship. And because I was bashing on bankers a little bit, we were talking about one of the things that the bankers, and we'll talk about this, but bankers, when they get their financial statements, when you send your bank's information for your lines of credit, they just get the financial statement that has the balance sheet, the income statement, the statement of cash flows, and the notes. they don't ask for the job schedule. A banker has no idea what this is. And I hammered him over it. Because to me, if I get this job schedule from you, I can back into a lot of numbers, and this right here, I mean, let's be honest, you guys are only as good as your jobs. So if I look at this, I can tell you, and we're going to go over this, because I'm going to tell you a couple things that, what do you see versus what I'm going to see, and some of the things we look for. But if you present this to me, I can tell whether you're legit or not without having to even look at your balance sheet or income statement. I'll back into it. They don't. They just get that income statement and balance sheet, spit it in their computer, and boom, it spits out a bunch of ratios and decides whether you're good or not. And that's the difference. So this banker and I'm telling him, he's standing right next to me as I'm hammering on him. And at the end of the day, he comes to me and he says, you know, you're right. And I, of course, then ask him, how'd that taste? Because that probably scared him, but I'm joking. He is actually a super guy. But he was right. He was like, you know what, you're right. We don't even understand these. And we're idiots for this. And I need to, so will you come train my bankers? So about a month ago, I go to Zions Bank, up on their top floor in the new building that's all right. Yeah, no, heavens no. I am who I am, man. So I go just like this, and I go in there and I meet with 6 bankers. They're all in white shirts and ties. I didn't know if I was in the church office building or Zions Bank. Maybe they're one and the same. But yeah, they all have the clean white shirts and ties, and here I am like this. Like, yep. Yeah, there must be a sky bridge that connects it. So I go in and I meet with these 6 bankers, and for 2 hours, I'm just going over job schedules with them, explaining why they're missing out on what they're missing out. So if your bankers ask you, if you're with Zions Bank and they start asking you for job schedules, I apologize. You can blame me. I started to educate them on it, so some things to look at. So let's go back to the partners. We talked about the attorney, we talked about the banker. Now here's the most important part, your CPA. If you are going to get into bonding, please, 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 get with a construction accounting CPA. Your mom and pop CPA doesn't get it. Trust me when I tell you this. I've been doing this for 20 years. Your mom and pop CPA does not understand construction, and here's why. If you go to construction accounting, or if you guys, we're going to typically ask for what's called a percentage of completion statement. I didn't hear Tyler's presentation. I had a client I had to go visit. I have no idea if he talked to you about it. But if he didn't, this is what makes a percentage of completion statement. The difference between an accrual or a cash basis statement and a percentage of completion statement is this job schedule right here. It includes, for the year end, it's going to include all your completed jobs and all your uncompleted jobs. It is literally like somebody standing over your financial picture, taking a picture of you at 12/31. Okay, that's in the archives, right? They take a picture. That's all we have to go off of. Now, one of the things that we will ask you if you bond frequently, we will ask you for an interim financial statement. It doesn't need to be CPA prepared. It's in-house just to see how you're doing during the year. But for the most part, we judge most of our decisions based off that 12/31 statement, your year-end, fiscal year-end statement. We need to know how you're doing. The other thing is if you bond a lot, you guys, we want to see how our bonds are doing. We want to see how our bonded jobs are doing. I mean, well, first of all, we're going to look at everything, but we particularly are interested in our bonded jobs. And we'll talk more about this WIP. But your CPA, they do not teach construction accounting in accounting school. They don't. It is a niche. So when so-and-so from, I'll just use a big firm, Ernst & Young, right? Let's say they do Huntsman Chemical, huge company. This CPA from Ernst & Young, if he were to come into you and to your business and look at it, he would have no idea how to prepare your statements because they don't teach construction accounting in college. It is a niche. It is something that is learned and developed over time. So there are a handful of good construction CPA firms. Now, when I meet with contractors with the insurance agent, I typically ask, 9 times out of 10, they have some poor CPAs when they're just getting into bonding. So I tell them, I say, okay, where do you guys want to go? Because we typically, as surety companies or bonding companies, we can take you up to a certain limit just off in-house financials or tax returns. Typically, it's $1 million. I'm a little higher because I have more authority than most local guys do. So but let's just say $1 million round number. We can take you up to $1 million, but say you want to chase the $2 million or the $3 million jobs. We are going to require you get a CPA reviewed statement, not an audit. There's a difference. Audit is the full-blown, you open up the kimono, he sees everything on an audit. They verify, they double check, they triple check oftentimes. A review, they're going to check, but it's not as detailed. So therefore, as you can imagine, the pricing differs. An audit is very expensive. A review, it's going to hurt. It's going to take a little bit of flesh from you. A compiled statement, not so much. It's nothing more than the CPA taking your book, slapping a letter on it saying, yeah, I've looked at it, it jives. So keep that in mind. There are different levels that we'll require. Again, if your insurance agent and bonding company are meeting with you, we can discuss that as to what we need. Okay? But again, it is a niche. Your mom and pop CPA, and I'm speaking generally, I'm not trying to single anybody out here, but if your mom and pop CPA doesn't understand construction accounting, I highly suggest you sever the tie if you want to get into bonding. And the reason is because they're just not going to know what to do. I have had numerous times where I've sent a sample financial statement. What Tyler, I actually did see where he posted something up there of a sample reviewed statement. I think it was called Review Construction Company. That is what we're going to ask for. And a lot of times I've sent that to the contractor and I've said, this is what we're looking for. Ask your CPA if he can do this. And a lot of times the answer is, well, yeah, of course I can do that. And then we get the statement and it looks like crap. It literally looks like my daughter could have written it on a napkin better than what some of these CPAs do. It's scary. And I've even had contractors who are legitimate contractors that have been in trouble with their CPA where, I got one that like I said, I would have rather had it written on a napkin. I'm just like, how much did you pay this guy? Oh, we paid him $5,000. I'm like, this isn't even a review. And you paid $5,000 for this? This thing's a dumpster fire. It really is. So keep that in mind. Get a construction CPA. I obviously have names. Your insurance agents probably have names, but I always refer 3. Well, at least 2. Because at the end of the day, I don't want you guys to know that I don't want you to think I'm in bed with one CPA. I get nothing from these guys. Like I said, Tyler, I referred him to significant accounts that they were unhappy with their CPA firms. I referred Tyler in, he closed the deal, he got it. I might get a sleeve of golf balls. It's not like I'm on his payroll. So I get nothing from it other than if Tyler does a good job for you or whomever I refer in, it makes me look good. Like I know what I'm doing. So that's why I refer quality, trusted people to you, is because we know their work, we know they're going to treat you right, and if they don't, I shut the referral sources off. I had one CPA who did a horrible job, just got complacent, ironically was going through a divorce, got complacent, started neglecting his clients. I literally fired the guy. I said, you're off. I had referred him a lot of accounts. I stopped, shut him off, which affected his livelihood, but like I said, he can't make me look bad. So, and then the other thing is your insurance agent. Now this is a plug. I'm not doing any disrespect. I won't name names. I'm sure your insurance agents are fine. But if you are, first of all, on the insurance side, get with an agent who understands, similar to that CPA, who understands construction. You guys are in a unique field. You have construction defects. You have design issues if you're doing design build, or if you're doing any type of design work on your own, where you're designing where the pipe goes and all that stuff. You have issues that most, like a restaurant, wouldn't have. So just make sure your insurance agent understands construction. All right. I literally had this happen, probably too much to say, but I have met with numerous excavation contractors where we get a copy of we'll ask for a certificate of insurance, just to make sure you have coverage, right? But I've met with some excavation contractors who are with companies that exclude soil subsidence. Now, do the math on that. An excavation guy playing in the dirt that doesn't have coverage for soil subsidence. Well, what does an excavator do? He plays in the dirt. He messes it up, and he doesn't have coverage for it. So just understand your policy, because I cannot tell you how many times we've seen this where something may be excluded, or your prime business may not have coverage. I also had another contractor, Mason, the same Mason I was telling you about earlier, had a crane tip over. The crane was not on the policy. He had added it, he did everything he wanted to, but the crane for some reason didn't make it on the policy. Now this is a $300,000 crane, and it was not covered because it blew over into a building. Now, luckily, they got it added, and the insurance company stepped up. But let me just tell you, your insurance agent has what's called errors and omissions coverage. It's professional coverage that if they screw up, and thank goodness there's no insurance agent here, they'd kill me right now for telling you this, but they have this E&O coverage. We thought we were going to have to help this contractor make a claim on this insurance agent's E&O, which is sad. But, you can't, so just, I guess the moral of that story is just get with a good insurance agent who understands you and your business, and then conversely will get you with a bonding company that understands you. And then again, they're key. They represent not just me, they represent multiple surety companies. They'll put you with the fit that you need, okay, that gets your business. What, for continuing ed, how long do you need me to go? Okay. Yeah, fire away.
What are the main, when you get a financial statement, what are like the top 5 things you guys are looking for?
Okay, let's do that, because that's where I'm going to go. You guys got 5-10 more minutes? Okay, let's do this. All right. Look at your job schedules. Okay, so what we're looking for, top 5 things we're going to look for is what determines your bonding program, right? Now that I've gave you all this information, what's going to determine your bonding program? We look at a lot of things. Now again, we call them the 3 C's. If you talk to any bonding company, they'll tell you the 3 C's. Character, capital, capacity. And notice I said first one was character. We'll come back to that. Capacity is what you're able to handle as a company. Capital is the financial resources. What your company, because I tell everybody I meet with, I have a 8-year-old daughter, and she could tell you this. It's hilarious because I do this in every meeting, and my underwriters that work for me, they've even copied me. I should have trademarked this. Your bonding mirrors your balance sheet. As your balance sheet does this, your bonding's going to do this. As your balance sheet does this, your bonding's going to do this. So keep in mind, a lot of our capacity that we lend to you guys as far as bonding limits, we establish 2 things in bonding. We establish a single job limit and an aggregate job limit. The single limit, obviously, what single job can you bid on? The aggregate limit is how much in cost to complete can you have at any one time. Now, if you have a $2 million job, a $3 million job, and a $5 million job, that's $10 million in contracts, but that's not the aggregate. The aggregate's not $10 million. It's your cost to complete on those jobs. So if you're 50% done with one and 20% done, that's the number, because that's what we're obligated to do. If we have to come in and, if you default and we have to come in and take over those jobs, our liability is what's left to complete, not the contract amount. So we look at, yes. So on this particular job schedule you have, he didn't put it on there, did he? He doesn't have a cost to complete, but we can back into it. So on this particular contract, if you look at the contract price, which is $26 million, and you look at his total cost, which is $22 million, so you're going to take the $22 million, and then we want our cost to date, which is over here in the blue, the direct contract cost to date is $15 million. So this contractor has $7 million in cost to complete. That's his backlog. That's the number we're looking at, not the $26 million, or $26 million. So it's cost to complete, not your contract amount left. So big things we're looking at is balance sheet. Working capital, your current assets minus your current liabilities. Now again, understand we discount stuff. This is not the time. I mean, this is a bonding 101, right? If you ever want to take the 201 class, Dave can certainly have me back and I'll delve deeper into the financial numbers as far as what we allow and what we don't, but this isn't the time or place to tell you what we allow. But I'll give you an example. Inventory, one of my random thoughts for you is contractors should never have a lot of inventory, because even you service guys, I get it, you need to stock trucks, but it shouldn't be a lot, because at the end of the day, if you can't sell that inventory, it's a wasted asset, and that's why we discount inventory. That's just giving you an example. So understand that even though you may look at a financial statement and say, oh, I've got $1 million in current assets and current liabilities are 700,000, so I have 300,000 in working capital, that should get me 5 times that, should get me my single bond limit of $1.5 million. Nah, not necessarily the case, because we might discount some assets. Your note receivables to yourself, if the company shuts down tomorrow and you owe the company money, what's the likelihood of that being paid? Slim to none, right? And Slim's got a foot out the door. So just keep that in mind. Yes. Now, there are different ways to classify inventory, though, too. For example, on this particular job schedule, if you look at job number 7-207, Prototype Elementary 999 Remodel, that's quite the job name, for $5.7 million. If you look at this particular contract and you go over to the over and under billings, and there's an over billings, the negative number of $822,000, what an over and under billing, and really what percentage of completion accounting is these over and under billings. Under billings are, you've done work and have yet to pay or have bill for it. Therefore, it's an asset. An overbilling is the opposite. It's a liability. It's you've not done work, but you've been billed for it and paid for it. So you still owe whatever it is you did there to the owner. So obviously, overbillings, they're a good thing. You're working off the owner's money. Underbilling, not necessarily the best thing. Even though it's an asset, it means you haven't been paid for this. So in this particular scenario, this contract, it's 50% done, 51. He's $822,000 overbilled. Now what we're going to look at is that overbilling? Is there money in the bank? Or have you paid down? Now I've got a contractor who pays on his cash. Now he does a CPA reviewed statement on a percentage of completion, but he pays taxes on a cash basis. That's fine. We don't care how you pay taxes. So what he does is every fiscal year end, it's the same thing. He drains his bank account, maxes out his line of credit, doesn't collect one receivable. Actually, he does, but he sets them in the drawer. Doesn't collect a receivable, so he'll have a number of 0 cash, receivables, I'm just making this up, $2 million, and payables of $500,000, and bank line, he's into it $500,000. Now, you might look at that and go, oh, it's horrible, because my competition did. I look at it and I say, this contractor's stout, because I see what he's doing. He's playing tax games. That's fine with us, because the working capital has not changed. He's got $2 million of receivables. He's prepaid all of his accounts payable, so they're down. If you look at the ratio, $2 million of receivables versus $500,000 of payables, fantastic. All he's done is taken his money, prepaid all of his payables he can, maxed out the line of credit, and then come January 1st, line of credit's paid off by all the money that was sitting in the drawer. He now deposits those January 1st, pays down the line of credit, everybody's happy. So we get an interim statement, he's flush. We get what they're doing. So the point of it is there are games you can play that still make you qualify for the bonding, because again, even though he has no cash, he has a good working capital. Those current assets are high. So keep that in mind. Now, let's go back to the overbillings. If you've overbilled $800,000, we want to see something for that money, hopefully, right? Because you've been paid for work that you haven't done. Hopefully that's in the bank. Now, if it isn't in the bank, did you prepay some stuff? Did you prepay some materials? This particular scenario, there might be something in there that is like a piece of equipment. Maybe you guys had to buy a generator or whatever, some huge piece of equipment that you had to prepay for that you can't bill the owner yet for. Or vice versa. Maybe you ordered this equipment, you had to get it paid for, but you're not able to actually install it yet. We get that. There's an explanation to everything. Now, what we're going to look for on these over and under billings, that's why we want to tell you to get with a good CPA, because we look at this and say, if you're underbilled on a job that, let's say there's a $500,000 underbilling here, which means you've done the work and haven't been paid for it, and the job's 95% complete. We're going to ask questions on that, because our logical explanation is you've got an unapproved change order or there's a problem on the job. Because if it's 95% and you're that much underbilled, there's a problem, and we need to know why. Now, it could be simply a timing issue, but it's very rare at 95%. We hope you're current on the billings. Okay? Again, all stuff a CPA, a good construction CPA would walk you through. Okay? Does that answer your question? Balance sheet, we're looking at the ratios, current assets, So your working capital determines your single bond limits. Your net worth, equity in the company, determines your aggregate program. We're going to look at what your assets are made up of, what your liabilities are, how much bank debt do you have, does the bank own you, income statement, we're looking at your G&A expenses, what does that make up. I've got a contractor who does a ton of revenue, they barely make any money. I mean, just eke out a profit, it's disgusting. But we still bond them, and they're a good firm, but it's just like, well, are you just in business to be in business, or are you in business? I mean, I don't know about you guys, but anything I want to do, I'm a for-profit. I don't need more charity cases. So I'm in it to make money, and my company is in it to make money, and hopefully you guys are too. I mean, if you're just eking out a profit, at some point you got to look and say, okay, am I too much overhead? Or candidly, am I just doing the wrong thing here? Maybe I should go be a banker.
So for you, is it
Yeah.
negative not to have a line of credit?
Depends. It's always good to have a line of credit, and it's definitely a positive, right? However, if you've got a...
You have to pay all the fees and you never use it.
Correct. Now that's what I was just going to say is, if you're a well-heeled contractor, like the one I told you earlier, no, it's stupid. I've told him to cancel it a million times, but for him it's well, gal, I've always had one, maybe I need it. And I'm like, really? With $2 million in cash, what's $100,000 going to do for you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so no, I told him to cancel it a million times, but he's just afraid to do it. And they don't charge him much to renew it. It's like a 0.5 point origination fee, so it's not a ton of money.
But $100,000 is nothing.
Exactly. So yeah, that's why I said it depends. Now, if you're doing bigger jobs and maybe your cash isn't as strong as it needs to be, I would absolutely tell you to get a line of credit, because it's always, I'm telling you all these examples, but these are true. I've got contractors who literally, the firm I met with, they're bidding phase 2 of the airport. They're on phase 1. It was one of the ones I told you that they're great. They have a $3 million line of credit. And what they do is they tie it to a sweep. So they have very minimal cash. Their bank line fluctuates. It's 0, it can go to 3, it can go down to 2. I mean, it always fluctuates when receivables come in. But for them, they use their line of credit to prepay vendors because they're on 2% discounts. So for them, their view is well, my line of credit doesn't charge interest till 60 days. No, it's a sub. Yeah, so he said, yeah, he's bidding to the airport generals. That's what I was getting at. But he uses his line of credit to prepay all of his materials. He saved over $400,000 last year by prepaying materials. And he uses an Amex every now and then for points. He goes to Hawaii with his wife, first class, every year because he's got millions of points. So there are advantages to using that line if you can play the game right. So he plays it right. But he's a sophisticated subcontractor, does $50 million a year in revenue, has a CFO who gets it, so he plays that game. So for him, the interest on the line of credit, he paid like $50,000 in interest, but he made $400,000 in savings from his vendors from taking advantage of the discounts. So $400,000 against 50, yeah, I'd take that ratio all day. So like I said, it depends. That's where meeting with me or a bonding company or an insurance agent would take advantage, because I would look at it and say, yeah, maybe you don't need it. It's pointless. But to answer that, to go in another vein of that conversation would be, it's so much easier to get a line of credit when you don't need it versus when you do. These bankers are interesting folks. That's what I said. They are just interesting. They don't lend when they need to, and when you don't need them, they're happy to lend. So right now, banks are aggressive. They need to make some interest income. They need to, especially if you work for Wells Fargo, they're trying to get underneath that stigma of fraudulent accounts. Exactly. Any other questions? Because I know some of you are fading on me, so let's go hit them. Thank you guys. If you no other questions, I'll be done. Thank you.